Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlocked Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and boy, you guys are in for a super duper treat today. But before we get started, I've got a couple of questions for you before I introduce my amazing guest. I want to know, do you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck? And if you have a desire to join the 20% that actually do better, and I'm talking much, much better than the vast majority, are you one of those people, or have you ever experienced one of those moments where you just kind of go, what the heck am I doing? And it becomes painfully clear that you're not really living the life that you want. Now, if you've ever been in that situation, I want you to know that we've been there too. So I've been there, and my guest Terry has been there as well. And, in today's conversation that we're going to have, we're going to tell you how to get out of that. And he's going to share with you best practices, a step-by-step system, which you guys know I absolutely love step-by-step systems that are going to help you to get out of that mouse wheel and actually join, those that are living the life that they want. They're living their life unlocked, just as the show, we talk about every single week. So without further ado, let me do this. Let me introduce you to our special guest, Terry Begue. He's going to tell you all about his history, which he's got quite a story to tell of where he started and how he's come to be doing what he's doing now, and how he actually has gone about writing his very new book that he's just released. And I won't give away the name of the book just yet, because I won't steal his thunder. I'll let Terry share the name of the book, and we'll also give you the link to that book so that you can go and get it, and you can follow this very specific step-by-step system that Terry has created that is going to take you from being stressed, overwhelmed, living paycheck to paycheck, to actually living the life that you want. So I want to say a huge big welcome to Terry. Fantastic to have you here. Welcome to the Unlock Show.
Oh, it's great being here, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to share everything that I know and answer all your questions.
I know I've like spent quite a bit of time before we have any guest on the Unlock Show. I do a lot of research on you and kind of get a bit of detail about your backstory. So I've got a bit of your backstory, and I'm really interested for you to sort of tell our audience how it all started. And I'm talking you go back some number of years, right to the point of kind of leaving, say, high school.
Yep.
Is where it sort of all started for you. So let's start
Exactly.
there. Give the condensed version, but
Sure.
how did that all come about?
I'll try not to talk too fast, but I will give you the Reader's Digest. In high school, I realized I couldn't work for people. I didn't know it at the time, but I had that entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. I never was fired. I just didn't stick around very long. I wanted to make my own decisions. So I knew I wasn't college material getting out of high school. And the only other way I could make above average income, I felt, was to own a business. And I knew a little bit about the painting business, not that much at all. And I went right out of high school, and I was a train wreck. I mean, I had no business skills. I had no people skills. I had no connections, no money, no equipment. I just knew I was going to make it work, and I would not give up on it. And it went on like that for a long time. Married my wife when I was very young. I was 21. She was just 19. And I made her a lot of big promises. I said, stick with me. I'm going places. I'm a business owner. And by that first Christmas, I remember rolling pennies to buy her a Christmas gift that first Christmas. I was a pathetic, sorry case. And everything changed for me, though, the very day. I mean, I got it pinpointed in my life to the day my life turned around. And it all came down to just three little words that my wife said to me. Came home from work, and there she was, kind of half in tears on the couch. Never a good sign, right? And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said three little words, and they weren't "I love you." They were, "Terry, I'm pregnant." And I can't explain, Tracy, other than it was like a switch. It flipped in my brain. All of a sudden, this crappy lifestyle, this just reacting to life instead of making the life that I wanted happen, was no longer going to be good enough. We sat down, and I said, "I'm going to fix this. We're going to get out of debt. We're in a little one-bedroom apartment." And I made her promises. I said, by the time our son's born, which would have been 8 months later, our situation's going to change. And a month after our son was born, I moved into a brand new 3-bedroom house, double my income 2 times over the next year then too. So everything turned around for me. And people ask me, well, what weren't you doing those first 8 years? And honestly, I knew what I had to do. I never took action. I never took chances and started, as I said, I was reacting to life instead of making the life I wanted happen. And we wrote out a list of what we wanted, and I made a plan to make it happen. And I failed a lot of times along the way. But I'll tell you what, I've had my business now for 44 years, and I painted over 5,000 homes, and I turn away more customers than I take just because of what I call the four abilities. But that's what's in my book. I wanted to
Yeah,
just
and we'll
get
we'll
you.
we'll kind of unpackage some of that. But isn't that really
Mhm.
interesting? And I find, Robin Helm, who's watching today, she's saying, you found your why. So in that moment, it's almost like, oh my God, a matter of urgency has come about. Oh, I can't, I've got somebody else that I have to take care of. It's not just about me anymore. I
Mhm.
actually have to do something about it.
Mhm.
And that provided you with some, level of urgency and motivation, I suppose, to make a difference or to
Oh
start
yeah.
making changes. And to me, that at that time, it's kind of like that, almost a. It seems as if you saw that almost like an ultimatum. You have to do this. Like our life is about to change.
Yeah.
We can't continue this bringing a new human into the world. We have to do something a little bit different. And that giving you that moment of almost looking into the future and going, well, this is not what I want to bring them into. I'm going to make some changes.
Mhm.
So doing that change in like a matter of 8 months, that's
Mhm.
pretty radical change in a very short space of time. So that indicates that, it's absolutely possible to
Yeah.
make that radical turnaround in a business in such a short period of time. Let's unpackage, what was it that you think were the fundamental things, other than, gosh, I've got this matter of urgency and now I've got to
Mhm.
do something about it? Like, what were the actual actions you took that made
Mhm.
such a big difference to the outcome in just the short 8 months?
Sure. And there were a lot of them, but there were really maybe two or three that were key that made a big difference. The first one, as I mentioned, was taking action. I was so
Mm,
action motivated. I hated where I was, and I knew I had to fix it. And so I would do so many things that, I didn't know if they'd work or not. And some of them were bad ideas, but the way I looked at it, making a bad choice was better than no choice at all. So I became very proactive to getting out there and talking to people, anyone who was thinking about having painting done, finding a way to connect with them. I didn't drink coffee, but if they asked me to come in and have a cup of coffee, I sure did. I sat down with them and I drank that coffee because it gave me a reason to be with them and in front of them. And I started to learn that people weren't necessarily looking for the best painter in the world, because I wasn't that person, or even the cheapest price, which I was close at first, but I started raising them. They were looking for someone that they could build a relationship with. And that was it. They wanted to
mm,
be able to understand who I was, what I was about. A big piece of my book is about personal branding, ways to create your brand so people will want to be around you. Another thing that I did is I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, so I joined Toastmasters. And I know everybody thinks Toastmasters is about giving toasts, or at least giving speeches.
mm,
What it did for me is it gave me confidence. The people in there helped me to understand that I had value, and they taught me how to communicate that value to my customers. Okay. Another big thing for me was I joined an organization. I was in the service industry. So I joined a group named NARI, the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. But what that did for me is, all of a sudden, all the people that were just looking at me like I was Terry Begue, house painter, all of a sudden I was a professional because I was a member of NARI. And it put me to the level of the
mm.
experienced contractors that were in that group in the customer's eyes. So they saw me as someone that at that time I didn't even believe I was. So that gave me a lot of trust, built-in trust, by joining a professional organization. I definitely recommend that, even if it's nothing more than Toastmasters. But no matter what you do, there's organizations out there, and I have a list of them in a course that I created and a way to find them, things like that. And then the last thing I think was really big is I just entered into a home and garden show. There was no painters in
Mhm.
that sort of a thing. I created a silly little display and I got in there, but they gave all the people that were in it a couple minutes on the radio, and I got on there and I talked just like I am right now. I said, I know what I'm doing. I didn't say, I asked people to trust me. I said, if you'll take a chance on me, I won't let you down. And people started coming in and meeting me and signing up for estimates. And before that was over, I think I had 80 or 90 leads in that 1 week. That turned into probably 30 or 40 homes. And with that, I was able to hire some people. And all of a sudden, what I used to do in one day, busting my butt by myself, we were getting done, or in 1 week, we were doing in 1 day. So then my next problem is I had to learn how to schedule a lot of work because I didn't have enough work to keep a crew going, but I needed this crew because it was leveraged my time that way through my crew. And that's when I created what I call the 4 abilities. And what that is a selling system so people can learn what you're about, what you stand for. And it tells you little characteristics that they're looking for that you need to show. Things like that. So those were some big things that I did. And I've spent the last 30 years now fine-tuning all of that. So as I mentioned, in 44 years, I've painted over 5,000 homes now. And I still love what I do.
Brilliant. And it just reminds me, actually, because was it yesterday? Gosh, the days run into one another. Either yesterday or the day before, I was out and actually chatting with a local carpet layer. And funnily enough, this conversation that you're talking about came up because he had his young son with him at the time. And he was, helping dad in the school holidays clear out some of the inner coils that you put inside of the carpets. And anyway, we got chatting about, the future and what is he wanting to do. And he was talking about, I need to get off the tools. He said, I just can't get to the point where we can grow big enough that I can actually employ other people. And I don't know if I want to, hand this down to, because he was talking about his son and building a legacy or building some sort of business that he might be able to take over one day, and then saying, but I don't know if I want him to do that because I don't want him to end up like me. So the whole system, that process of you talking about finding ways to leverage so that you can actually step out of, step up into the business rather than being on the floor and in the ground all the time. And I was just thinking about that as you were talking, because even though it's a different industry, it's a very similar, situation that I actually heard a business owner talking about just a day or two ago. So, in terms of, again, thinking about the things that you did, I mean, obviously mindset plays a really big part of getting yourself into gear, making sure that you continue to be motivated. But that fact that, taking action is vitally important. Well, what did you do to make sure that each and every day, because now you're on a timer. Baby's not going to wait till, hey, Terry's got everything together and you can welcome him into the world now because you've got loads of money. That doesn't happen that way. He's coming in, 8 months. So what did you do to ensure that you maintained a level of mindset that enabled you to continuously take the action that you needed to take?
Boy, that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked that exactly the way you did right there. But looking back, I think one thing that I did right off is I started getting up earlier. This is going to sound crazy. And there's a great book that'll help you. Now I'm up at 5 a.m. At that time, it was just like 6, even though I didn't go to work till 7:30 or 8. But what I found is if I could get up in the morning, look at my list of all the things that I want to do and need to do, and ask myself, why am I doing these things? What is the goal? Where do I want to be at the end of this week and at the end of that month? And as I would cross things off, I would feel better about it. I feel a little bit more confident. It was that believing in myself. That was, at first I didn't believe in myself. I drove an old beat up truck and I was embarrassed with it. But then I learned, wait a minute, I found transparency to be so big when it comes to creating trust. I started telling people, yes, that is an old truck, but I have a low overhead. I'm more affordable because I don't have a new van. I will someday. But then again, I would say to them, I wouldn't say if you'll trust me, because I don't think that's the right thing to say. I would say, if you'll take a chance on me, I'll guarantee you, I'll promise I'll do the best job I can do for you and you'll be satisfied. And I still work that way to this day. People want to, I'm doing $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 houses, paint jobs, and people want to give me a down payment. I said, no, just pay me when I'm done and you're happy. That probably sounds crazy, but it shows a level of confidence that they don't see anywhere else. And it's by extending that trust to them first, then they trust me so much more. They say, I don't know how you can say
Mm.
you can do that. And I said, we have a system, a process for painting, but then I also have a process for getting those customers, those high-end customers.
I love how you've taken that situation and you actually turned it around and turned it into an actual benefit to the
Mm-hmm.
customer, and the fact that one moment I'm embarrassed because I'm driving around
Mm-hmm.
in a beat old truck, but then looking at it from a completely different point of view and saying, because perspective's everything, right?
Yeah.
Looking at it from a perspective of well, like that gives me, lower overheads and giving a reason as to why you have that. And I love the fact that, rather than saying, hey, if you trust me, because it's something I think people develop themselves. And I think that's where you're coming from is, they develop that themselves. It's not one for us to say to somebody else, hey, you should trust. It's
Mm-hmm.
we'll develop that trust over time. But here's what I'll do is I'll lead with some value first. I'll give you a bit of I'll extend the olive branch to you and say, hey, I trust you that you will pay me at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the job, and I'll just get on and do it. And no
Mm-hmm.
doubt that I'm sure that in the four abilities that we will get to, that you'll talk about that and how that surely has turned into referral business and a lot of it over time.
Yes. Yep. It is. And it was, at first having a process for painting homes quickly was nice, but if you don't have any work, it wasn't all that great. Then I started getting work, but I was learning what jobs pay well and which ones I should have avoided. But that's just part of the process, right?
Mm,
But I found the key to success is just having a pipeline full of quality customers and jobs where you're going to make your best money on. I used to be a painter who would paint everything. Then I kept niching down. Then I became an exterior only painter because most painters were interior. So that set me apart. Then I started just painting exteriors just for homeowners because they've always paid quicker than like working for a realtor or an apartment owner or anyone else who wants to hire you, but they're not going to get the benefit from it. So I started avoiding all those, and that made me even more in demand. And then I niched down even more to say, we have so much business, we're only going to paint aluminum sided and cedar sided homes and work directly for homeowners and only do outside. And it sounds like I'm niching myself out of business, but like I said, I turn away as many jobs as I take now. And
mm,
we're always anywhere from 30 to 50 houses booked ahead. And people call me now. The reason I know I'm on point with the things that I'm telling you is because of the feedback I get. Every year I get people calling me saying, I don't know how far you're out on how far I'm going to be scheduled back, but will you just put me on your list or ready to do my house because I don't know when you can give me a bid. And I always laugh and I go, but I haven't even given you a price yet. And they say, oh, I know you'll be fair. But when people hire you sight unseen, price unknown, it is incredible. And the fact that I get that year after year tells me I'm doing
mm.
something right, I think.
So I mean, clearly that leads into the system and the processes that you've created that create that brand and a reputation that
Mhm.
precedes you, that people
Yeah.
know, hey, I'm going to go to Terry Begue because he specializes in this. What's interesting about that, Terry, is that a lot of and again, I'm gonna use this example of the carpet layer I was just talking to a couple of days ago, because the same kind of conversation came up. So you're talking about, you started out wide and a niche down and I niche and I niche and I niche until I become the person who is
Mhm.
known to be doing this type of painting, exterior for homeowners, and you can get very, very specific in all
Mhm.
of your languaging, your marketing, and everything else that
Mhm.
goes with it. When I was chatting with him, he was saying, a lot of people would say to me, why don't you do, because he just does carpets. Why don't you, branch out and do tiles and be doing laminate flooring and this
Mhm.
type of flooring and that type of flooring, and he saw that as I must be doing something wrong because that's what people are telling me. I'm like, well, actually, no, quite the opposite.
Mhm.
You want to get very, very, as you're saying, get very, very specific and very niched in what you do. Know
Yep.
and understand your customer to a level and a degree that nobody else knows, and
Mhm. Yep.
therefore that enables you to start creating a brand that is goes from being unnoticed to being unforgettable, right?
Mhm. Exactly. Yep.
Which,
That's
no
exactly what
pun
it is.
intended, but that's
And
exactly
it's
what Terry's program teaches, right? How to
it,
go
it
from being kind of like,
unnoticed,
who the heck are
unforgettable.
you? Yeah.
Yeah,
So now I
exactly.
can't forget you.
And like I said, I was a train wreck when I started, and now people, I don't know how my name comes up. I honestly haven't done any advertising or marketing since 2012, and my business still grows every year. And it's because of that word of mouth. That happens. Some people think that can take forever to build up a word of mouth audience, but it doesn't. It spreads really fast. There's those homeowner webs or allotment websites, places like that.
Mhm.
'Cause I ask people, where did you hear about me from? Because I don't advertise, and it's usually referral or repeat. But some say, or they'll hear it over and over. They'll say, I saw a sign. Then we talked to someone at work and they said you. Then we went on to our website here for our allotment that we live in, and you're the first name at the top. So that crossover stuff really helps a lot. But it's all about just getting yourself out there and knowing what the customers want, what they're looking for. And as I mentioned earlier, they're not looking for the cheapest of whatever you do. They're not looking for the cheapest. They usually throw that one out. Maybe they're not going to pay a premium price, maybe, but they'll still pay a fair price, especially if they think they could get a quality job. And I have what I have in my book, a free download that will get what's called the Power Six Pack. And in 6 documents, you can hand the customer little things that you probably have heard of, but when you pull them all together and you give them proof of insurance before they ask you if you're insured, that's powerful. Things like that.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk about your book. So you've got a brand new book coming out. The title of the book is
Attract and Keep Customers for Life. But
there you go, guys.
It's the subtitle that I think explains the book even better. Can I tell you that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, the subtitle is 4 Abilities to Build Trust, Communicate Your Value, and Charge What You're Worth. And that is the essence of the book. Right there.
And to get a copy of that, I'm just going to pop it up on the screen right here.
Sure.
So if you head on over to Amazon and you search for how to attract, so give us the name of that book again.
You could either search Attract and Keep Customers for Life, or you could just put you can put my name in, but my last name's hard to spell. That'll bring it up too. I also have a link we can put in the show notes if you'd like.
Please.
I think the book might be right now 99 cents, the Kindle version. I think we were doing a promotion. It might have ended already, but I'm not sure. Probably by the time this airs.
Well, yesterday it was still 99 cents, so we'll check and make sure that it is. But I'd recommend you guys go and get a copy of that. I've put the link at the bottom. We'll put the links in the show notes too, so that you can click it and go and get a copy of the book. Let's give everybody a bit of an understanding of, you talk about the 4 abilities, that we need to understand and adopt. What are they, and why are they so important?
Okay, they sound like a selling process, but I call them just a connecting process. And the reason they're so important is because when people want to build a relationship, it goes in steps, of course, just like any relationship. And what I call the 4 abilities are likability, believability, trustability, and wowability. Now, the first 3 are sort of the get the job. Those are selling skills. Wowability is about wowing your customers beyond belief to where that they got to have you. If they can't afford you, they'll wait till they can afford you. And that's what I mean by creating wow in your business. But I start with the natural process. Like, before anybody's going to trust you, they first need to like you at least enough to talk to you and see what you're all about. Okay. And then once they do like you, I know you don't have a ton of time when you're with a customer or you're meeting with somebody. But there is enough time to pay attention to what they're saying, let them talk, listen to what they're saying, be there to solve their problem. Those are some of the things I talk about in likability. Almost every person I call back, the first thing they say to me is, you're the first painter to call me back. So one of the things I talk about, if you want to be likable, call people back as soon as they call you. Make it part of your routine. Once I decided to turn things around in my life, first thing I'd do when I walk in the doors, I'd get on the phone, play my messages, and I'd return all calls. That was 40 years ago, and I still do that today. The first thing I do is I call people back. They always say you're the only one to call me. Another thing is be on time. If you say you're going to be at someone's house to meet them or be there at 6 o'clock, I'm there 10 till 6. I mean, this was before when I first started, there was no GPS, there was no computers because I'm old. And I used to, if I thought I was going to be late, I would stop at a payphone and call people and say, I'm sorry, I'm 15 minutes late. do you want to reschedule? And they'd say, no, just come on out. So those were little things that I would talk about: listening, looking for commonality, things that you have, in common. If I would go to somebody's house and I'd see kids' toys, I'd mention I had kids, or pet toys, maybe talk about a pet, just things so they could see you're just a regular person, not there just to sell them. You're a regular person. And then even from there, I thought to go from like to trust was just too big of a leap. So I put a bridge between that, and that's what I call believability. And that's what I call it, the bridge that connects like to trust. So once they like you, they're going to give you a chance to sell to them. You got to be believable. Call it credibility, maybe too. And things I use like for that are things like the organizations that I belong to, or if they go to my website and see I have a A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I think it's something else where you guys are. I'm not sure it's called that, but it's just an organization that tells the world that you're a legitimate company.
Credible business.
Yeah, things like that. The website. Oh gosh, there's so many on there. I practice transparency a lot. People don't want to have to guess what your motivations are. They know you're there to sell them, but they also need to know that you care about them. In their house, in their family. You got to show you care. That's one of the cores to this whole thing. So once you build up likability and they believe in you, then comes what I call the golden ticket, and that's trustability, or trust, of course, and things that you could do to build trust. And I have what I mentioned earlier, the Power 6-pack. And these are things like a copy of your liability insurance and workers' comp on the back. And people always say to me when I hand that to them, they go, "Oh, I was going to ask you about that," but most forget. But if you bring it up before they can ask, that it shows you're confident. Confidence is big, and transparency is big when it comes to building trust. Other things is testimonials I have from customers just like them, and I tell them that here's some people just like you, or I can point out houses in the neighborhood. We've done it so long that we've painted, and things like that. And there's 10 or 12 different little things that you could do for each one of these abilities. The last one, wow ability, that's just over promising and then over delivering, and collecting testimonials and if you go to my website, you'll scroll and see 80 or 90 or 100 of them, I think, on there now. But things like that to just blow the customer away with service. And they may not remember how great of the job you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel if you treat them like they matter. They're important to you.
Yeah. I'm trying to recall who that quote. People don't remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I can't remember if it was Oprah or Maya Angelou who said something like that. But it was one of those lovely ladies that had that as a quote.
I'll have to find out who that was and start, dropping their name before I say that, I think.
I can't. I just recall it. It might not be exactly the way that you said it, but it's something very, very similar. So in the 40 odd years that you've been been in business, and you've made a transition now, right, Terry? So like been in business for a long time, learned a ton of stuff, made mistakes along the way, because that's what we do. That's life. So let's talk about that first. Like, you've what are some of the mistakes that you have made that has now, led you to doing what you're doing, and we'll get to that in a moment, actually teaching other people how to avoid those mistakes? What are some of the biggies?
Some of them were early on things. Probably the biggest mistake I think I ever made, and somebody on a podcast just like this asked me one day, if you could go back and meet yourself when you were 20 years old, what would you say? And that's what helped me flush this out. Probably the biggest mistake I made in my 20s is I knew I didn't know it all, but I didn't want to ask for help from anybody. And that was a huge mistake that kept me. It held me down because I thought I could figure things out on my own. Oh, somebody mentioned that Maya Angelou.
Yeah, it's Maya Angelou.
Great. Yeah.
I was
great. Thank you for that. Whoever said that there. So, but the biggest mistake is I didn't ask for help. I should have talked to other painters. Heck, I probably should have worked for a painter first, but I was bullheaded. I thought I could figure it out on my own. And it probably cost me 10 years. I could have cut off that I could have trimmed off of that learning curve. So not asking for help. Another one was, I mentioned a little bit earlier, being embarrassed with how I would show up. I didn't have a nice whites on like a professional painter should, and I didn't have a nice truck. But instead of being embarrassed, I wish I would have earlier realized that they just want to know that you're going to be there and you're going to do the job that you promise you're going to do. And I should have been I should have practiced more transparency early on. That was another mistake that I made. Those are the two that I regret the most at this time. And thing that I've really noticed now is the owners, they don't want you to be a robot and just say what they think you want to hear. You know, I relax with them now. I treat them like my friends is something that has changed. I didn't do that at first. I looked at business like, it was almost a competition with my customers. Either they didn't hire me and they won, or they hired me and I won. But it took me a long time to realize that they weren't an obstacle to my success like I first thought. They were the very pathway to my success, because my customers, I like to think they love me because I always get paid, and I know I'm gonna come through and give them the job that they want. And like I said, I don't advertise. I don't know how people find me. It's just all word of mouth now. And it's a great place to be, but I believe it's because I started treating my customers like they were good friends of mine. And I wasn't playing. I wasn't putting that on. I wasn't phony about it. And I still think of them that way. You know, I forget them after a while, but they remember me, and we share pieces of each other's lives. And I still do that today. And that's what they're looking for, really, more than anything. They want to build a relationship with a contractor, you know, for long term.
Isn't it interesting, you know, listening to your story, and even if we go right back to the beginning when you know, it was like that aha moment, gosh, I've got to do something. You know, it appears to me that there's two fundamental things that have happened, which are, you know, you being very intentional. So switching your mindset from being or shifting your perspective, I should say, you know, from looking at things a certain way to now shifting your perspective and looking at things a different way. But it actually started with a different level of intention. So your focus changed, and hey, we're going to have a baby. I need to make this work. I've now got to focus on the activities and the actions that I need to take, and then shifting from that concept of I'm in competition with, you know, with my customers to now I'm in almost like I'm in business and in life with my customers.
Yep.
And I'm going to be very intentional about the way in which I do my business with, you know, a level of, I want to be somebody who's liked. I want them to believe me. I want to have a level of trust and transparency in everything I do. And then I want to make sure that I wow them wherever I possibly can. That comes with having you having thought about everything that you wanted, as in almost manufacturing the life that you want, rather than it just kind of meandering along and whatever I get is what I get for that day. You know, being extremely intentional about what you're doing. And I think for those that are listening, I think that is a piece of wisdom that I think, you know, is invaluable to take away from Terry today, is being very intentional about what you do. And I think the other thing is, you know, over time, as we get a little older, we get a little wiser, and we have, you know, these opportunities to look back and say, gosh, if I had the opportunity to do my life again, or I was to give my 20-year-old self some advice, then these are the things that I would say, you know, have a little bit more faith in yourself, back yourself, and you know, you would give yourself some advice. But in today's episode, Terry's actually sharing that level of wisdom and that gift to those that maybe are not quite there yet. Take on board what he's talking about, because it'll make a real big difference to your life. And like we said at the opening of this show, it will put you in the minority, those that are not living paycheck to paycheck, that are actually thriving in business. What do you think? So in the course that you've now created, so shifting from being let's call it a service-based business, you know, you're out on the ground painting houses, to now realizing, hey, I actually want to take what I'm doing and the things that I've learned, and I want to be able to share these with others so that they can avoid some of the mistakes that I've made, but equally be able to jump on and fast track their success using all the things that you've already tried, you've tested, you know to be true, you know to work. Tell us about your program that you've created.
Well, once I'd written the book, people that were reading it, a lot of people that I knew too from around town that knew they sell it. We have one of the biggest hardware stores privately owned in the country, right in my town, and they sell my book in there. And people were starting to talk to me. They wanted more than to just read about it. They wanted to know, how to find these organizations and where they need to go to make some certain connection, whatever. And that's when I developed the course. It was with what I had pictured when I created the course was me when I was 20 years old. What did I need back then? Because I see people almost every day who are where I once was, and it breaks my heart to see that, because it can be fixed. If you have the motivation, and as you said, be intentional. I call it being goal oriented, and do something something I told myself back then is I got to do something every day that puts me closer to my goals. And I would create big goals. And even if it was only something as simple as just making a few phone calls, but I would always do something every day that took me closer. On Sunday, of course, nobody wants to talk to you, but I would spend that time reading. Some of these books behind here, I've read some of those 3 and 4 times over, because they were all about those people skills that you need. And that's how I learned about these relationships and connections and how important they are. And so anything you could do to gain knowledge, it just moved forward every day. And in time, it almost becomes like that snowball that starts to go. You create that momentum, and it goes over and over. And when I was writing my book, I put in bold print in one page, there's magic in momentum. It just hit me that one day. And what I meant by that is once things start to go, people and places will appear in front of you. I can promise you this, that you never could have planned for. But what it takes is being intentional, as you said, having goals and doing something every day to move yourself closer to those goals.
Fabulous.
And I really want to help people. There's ways they can talk. We can email, we can pick up the phone. I'll talk with them if there's a way to do it, or Zoom or whatever. I really enjoy this. I'm still painting with my guys because I love doing that. But going into the educational side of things, that's a whole new adventure for me. And I'm probably more excited about that now. So.
Is it? I mean, look, that's it's a sort of field where my expertise lies. So it's, I can totally relate to the fact that you're now, and it's quite different, right? Moving from painting houses to now going into the educational space and spending a lot of time with people and helping them to navigate the world of business, and particularly, when you're doing it online, it's a heck of a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is. It really is. When you quit putting pressure on yourself. It wasn't fun for me back in my 20s, but that was all self-inflicted wounds,
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, it's funny the things that we do to ourselves, and sometimes
Yep.
it's it comes down to our little ego getting the better of us in the
Oh,
early
yeah.
days, where no, I don't want to ask for help. I'll be able to
Yep.
figure it out on my own. And
Yep.
if only we had the wisdom then to know that, hey, it's actually okay to ask for help, and
Yeah.
and you'll get there a lot quicker. It's quite interesting because I like read and do a lot of research and things, and even someone like Richard Branson. And I think in an interview he was talking about, the reason that he's so successful is his actual ability to continuously make decisions. And what's interesting about that too is I was talking with my husband about that very thing just a couple of days ago. We were having a conversation about sort of leadership and how sometimes as leaders, we have this persona or a need to feel as though we know the answers to everything. We don't want to look bad, like you were saying. Didn't want to turn up to somebody's house in my beat up old truck. I want them to think that I'm, I've got it all together, that I drive a nice truck, so therefore I must be successful. All of these things we sort of layer onto ourselves, and therefore we back ourselves into a corner thinking that we can only make a decision when we have the right answer, when we know that that's absolutely the right answer. Where in fact, like the likes of Richard Branson would say, the faster you can make a decision, it doesn't actually matter if it, as long as it's, hopefully it's not a completely wrong decision that is, destroys your business, but continuously make decisions and pivot and make some changes when you need to, and don't be afraid of that.
Yeah, don't be afraid of failing, right? Because I know it's gonna happen. It happens to everybody, and there's some books that are titled "Fail Faster" if you want to be successful. So
Yeah, absolutely, fail fast. So
Yep.
in terms So to wrap today up, I want to ask you this question on failure, because that is one of the things that a lot of people, I'm scared. I don't want to make that decision because I might fail. When you do fail, and people, we can have this over and over again. We can have failure after failure. How do you pick yourself up off the ground and just keep on going? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
I guess the thing that would help me the most, and I did fail a lot, especially in the early years, is maybe this isn't the right answer, but this is what worked for me, is I would just get back to work. I didn't care where it was. Sometimes I would take a whole weekend because I was just so frustrated with money that I lost somewhere, or I would just immerse myself into a job and I wouldn't come out. I would stay there for, 12 hours a day, 2 or 3 days. And I would fix, I'd remake the money that I lost maybe, or it would just help me get clear. There was always a place I could go. That was when I was working by myself, not with a crew or anything. And just understand that mistakes happen and you learn from them, and you got to put them behind you. And that's what I do. And it seems like as soon as I would do something positive, the sooner I could do something positive, the quicker that I would forget about that mistake. I would put it behind. I wouldn't forget about it, so it would never happen again to me. I'd make sure of that. But I didn't let it define me. Maybe that's the best word. Wouldn't let it define me. I just thought, no, I'm better than this. I can come back from this. And I tell a story where, my wife and I, we saved for our kids' college since they were born. We had 6 figures saved for them. And 6 months before my son started college, I lost it in real estate in 2008. I lost all that money. I had all tied up in these nasty houses. I never should have. It was just plain stupidity. I won't even go down that road or I'll start crying. And I still own them homes to this day. But you know what? Before, if you fast forward 10 years, I got both my kids through college. My son went to law school, no scholarships, and I paid for every dime of it, and no student loans. And I did that because I put my nose to the grindstone and I quit thinking about and worried about that money that I lost. And I just, by the time tuition was due, I had made it back, and I made it back, and I made it back, and I did. I got them. It was important to us. I know some people think their kids should earn their way, but their deal was they had to bring home A's, and we paid for school. And I made a huge, probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. And I came back from that, and now I feel like I can, once you get past something like that, you come out at the other end, it makes you stronger. You can feel like you could just walk through fire after that. And that's why I'm not afraid to take anything on today, because I did that and I got past it. And I still got those. I can't even go to those houses. I have a property management person hangs on to them. He says, we'll sell them when you can get enough back to get your money back. That's going to be a while yet.
Yeah.
And so my point is, just don't let them define you. Find a way to get past it, and then just start working your way back. Before you know it, life will look a lot brighter, I think, coming forward. I know that's not a fix for everything, but that's kind of what worked for me in business anyways.
Well, it seems to have worked pretty well for you over the years, with these setbacks. And when you say, you get to one of those, it feels like it's like momentous, like how the heck am I going to recover from this? But again, it was your attitude. Two big things out of today: attitude, mindset, of course, and just the intention of, this is what I'm going to do, and just being very focused. And once you master those two things, like you say, it doesn't really matter what gets thrown your way, because you have now the skill, you've got the momentum muscle, if we will call it that, to be able to pick yourself up and go, all right, I can just keep going, and I'll create something else out of this and look at it from a very different perspective. So I applaud you for that, because a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people would, gosh, that would, destroy some, but you've gone, not going to allow that to happen. Let's go. It's not defining me.
Yeah, boy, I thought it was going to destroy me. Those first few weeks after I realized that was really, really, I really went into a depression. But I'll tell you what pulled me out of it was when I decided I'm going to write a book. And it took me years and years to write this book, but that was the start of everything. And it's the things that I put in that book, is the things that I practice in my business. And as you mentioned earlier, I know they all work because I'm living proof. I don't have anything in that book. Nothing is theory. It's everything that I did. The mistakes I made are in there, but all the things that I did that worked. So really, that's why I call them proven strategies, because they work for me, and they've worked for a lot of people that have bought my book. So that's exciting to hear. It's a great way to pay it forward, kind of. I think.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I'm a big, one of the programs that we run with my business partner Vicky Helm. Her and I actually teach people how to create their own online program, their own show to build their brand, and actually write their own book. So by the time they've finished 12 months with us, they've actually got all three of those things
Wow.
created and their own business sorted. So it's music to my ears when you talk about. I took what I knew. I took what my experiences, the mistakes I made, the things that went really well, my proven strategies, because I've tried, true, tested many, many times. I collated all of that. I put it into a book. And then from that, obviously, came your program because, as you said, people were reading the book and then saying, hey, I want more of this. How do I get more information? And then there was born the the program itself. And we'll make sure that a link to Terry's program is actually in the show notes of today, so that you can, if you'd like to explore that further and get to know Terry a little bit more, you can head on over to the link that that my team pop into the show notes. Make sure you go and check that out.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. These sorts of things are needed, especially when you've had, some experience and you've got some wisdom to share. Like you say, if only I had a manual or a book that I could have picked up sometime and back in, my early days, and was able to follow a blueprint, maybe some of the things that it would have expedited your level of a success.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. You're going on there. Thank you.
To wrap up today's show, Terry, what is one piece of advice that you would give another entrepreneur or business owner that is maybe feeling a little, say, unsettled with where they're at in their life today? What's a piece of advice that you would give them?
Something that I did, and I do give this for advice, is if you're not where you want to be right now, is there somebody in your life that who is living the life you want? Maybe, and it's even if it's not someone that's in your area, you probably can connect with them now with the internet. It's not that hard, and really just talk to them. People will help you. I was afraid to talk to anybody back then, and ask them, how did they do what they did? And unless you're in direct competition with them, I found the more successful a person is, the more helpful they'll be. People like Richard Branson and those guys are great. They'll go out of their way. I think, I believe, I shouldn't say that, I don't know that for sure, but I know I would. If people asked me for advice in some way, I'd be more than happy to help in any way I could. So find who's living the life you want and start to copy what they're doing. I wouldn't be insulted by that. I'd be flattered if people would start to copy what I was doing, I think. So, and again, that's a big mistake for me, not doing that. I didn't think people would talk to me or want to talk to me, but people have already proven themselves and they're successful. They want to help other people. I truly believe that. And it's definitely the ones that don't are by far in the minority. Most of the people will help you if you ask.
That's fabulous. Well, look, guys, I want to say thank you so much to Terry today for sharing his wisdom, sharing, and taking the next step of being a successful business owner, but then taking it the next, to the next level and saying, well, now I actually want to help other business owners also be successful by sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experience through your books and your programs. So don't forget, guys, if you want a copy of Terry's book, they are in the link is in the show notes, or it's even in the comment section of today's show. If you head on over there now, you'll be able to click the link and you'll be able to go and get a copy. Like Terry said, at the moment, it's just 99 cents to get yourself the Kindle version. And you can also explore further with what Terry has to offer inside of his program. So I'd encourage you to do that too. But for now, I want to say thank you very much for Terry for being an amazing guest. Thank you guys for tuning in and spending time with us on the Unlock Show today. As I always say at the end of the shows, you want to make sure that you're going and living your best life. Go and unlock whatever is inside of you, because there's just no other way, right? We know that. So with that being said, have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you guys back for another episode of the Unlock Show with me, Tracy Wilson, next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Brisbane time. Thank you very much. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks. We're finished now? We're off?
We're almost. We'll see you later. Bye, guys.